All right, so I want to talk a little bit about AI and what's been going on because I don't think anybody really understands what's been going on. This cycle that AI has gone through is the tech cycle, just really fast. So by really fast, I don't mean, like 10 times faster. I mean like 100 times faster. So we've already gotten to the point where you've got AIs talking to AIs and telling other AIs what to do. Problem is, where are they getting that what to do from? Why does that even work? What is really going on? Well, what's really going on is we get LLMs. The scientists go, we solved the domain problem, which is absolutely false. And now AIs are not domain constrained anymore. They do fine in any domain. That's not really what's happening. What's happening is language is able to define a domain. Most of those domains are invalid. That's how you get hallucinations. Not the only way. That's one way you get hallucinations, is you're giving it an invalid domain or context. It's another way to think about it. And then coming up with stuff to justify the domain, right? So you've used the language to bring something into existence that automates some process, usually telling you something like research, right? Or coding. A lot of hallucination in coding, a lot more than you would think possible. And then bang, it just makes stuff up to make your context work, because the context has to assume context to do definitions. So it'll make up definitions in order to fix context problems. But you don't know you're giving it context problems because you don't know context very well anyway. So nobody thinks that way. It's the postmodern conundrum. So AI is just speeding everything up, but it's stealing everything from existing things or making them up. And that pattern of AI agents, and now they're talking to other AI agents, and they're, so why is it that if you get a bunch of coding agents and you have them coordinate amongst themselves, you get better software? Well, that's because it solves the domain problem. How does it solve the domain problem? Well, it turns out that there's an order to the universe, right? And so what happens is when you have a front end coder, a back end coder, a project manager, right? And maybe a tester or something, and they're coordinating through the management structure, through the project management or other management structure, that each of those domains, once they're coordinated by a coordinating factor, a manager works better, just like a corporation. So if you can automate some of the operations of a corporation, you get better results. Why? Because corporations are domain specialists, right? They have an overarching domain. Maybe they're, manufacturing film, for example, right? But then within the divisions of the companies, is why companies have divisions. There are specialists who are specialized in that domain. Oh, we make the machines, right, that make the film. Oh, okay. We do the chemistry that makes the film. Oh, we do the packaging for the film, right? Et cetera, on and on and on. And so once you emulate that through automation with AI, you get better results out of AI. And I don't think people sort of realize that that's what's happening, right? But now we're just recreating, the world at large within the computer in a different way. Is this good? Probably worst thing ever, but I guess time will tell. Um, can you use it wisely and to your advantage? Well, of course, that's true of everything. So this is the least interesting fact of all time. Um, but what does this mean? Should I use AI? Should I use it? You should use AI carefully if you understand context. It also means the best people for AI are people that understand context. Everyone else is going to get left in the dust. And so before, we'll say in the beginning, money momentum ruled the roost, right? How much money you had in your family kind of determined how well you were going to do. And then then the U.S. happens, and we sort of broke that whole paradigm because almost no one here had any money, or everybody that came here didn't have real wealth in the beginning. And then wealth started to build up, right? But we made wealth accessible and of value, right? And now we correlated wealth with education because it's correlated. Of course it is. It always was. Like higher education always correlates with wealthy people because wealthy people can afford higher education, not as in how much it costs, the opportunity cost, right? If you have to be on the farm to make the farm work, you can't afford education even if it's free, because it's not free. It's taking your time, energy, attention away from one thing and putting it towards this other thing, which doesn't produce immediate results, by the way. In fact, the time frame on results for education can be zero, right? It can be infinite. Like there's no time when education becomes useful. This is the whole why do I need to learn algebra problem, which, can be a valid concern. I'm not advocating don't teach algebra anymore or anything like that, but I'm saying there's a point when people say that. And that point isn't always correct because nothing's always correct, but also it is a valid point that needs to be considered. What are you teaching, and is it important? Can that thing that you're teaching convey value to the person you're teaching it to in the future? Because largely the answer is absolutely, under no circumstances will it ever convey them any value. And then what they do is they look at the second order effects and use words like exacting and right? AI has all these same struggles, right? If you feed AI a corpus of random YouTube videos and then you ask it questions and constrain it to only those YouTube videos, Notebook LM from Google does an excellent job of this, by the way. But there are other ways to do that. You're not going to get very good answers about general questions. And it, at some point, doesn't matter how much you feed it, because the more you feed it, the more contradictions you're going to get, because people are full of contradictions. So AI runs into the same problem of, is this information useful for me to know? Are these connections correct for what you want to do? And this is why I talk on navigating patterns quite a bit. I'm also on Eric Seitz' channel, Father Eric's channel. I guess he's doing Mondays now. I talk quite a bit about make final cause great again, right? Because without that end goal, that potential future vision, context is hard to determine, and correct context is nearly impossible. I mean, you can get anything right by accident, right? But it's rare. But it's nearly impossible to determine, if not impossible to determine. So what do you do with all that? Well, I mean, if you're going to use AI, you've got to use it carefully and understand that what you're doing is giving it the context to do the thing. Now, if you don't have that context, that's a problem. And the workaround is, you can steal that context from somebody else using AI. So like a lot of what I do now is I go to perplexity.ai, which is a fantastic tool, right? And I get the generalized information, and often that will give you structured information. And then you feed that into Claude or into Gemini, right? And bang, right? Another thing I do for my Navigating Patterns YouTube channel is I will grab suggestions based on my transcript from Claude, and then grab them from Gemini, and then merge the two together, and I get better titles and descriptions, right? And tags and things like that. So all of that is helpful. Like this is, AI is great for that, right? Especially if you're trend following. But AI can only ever trend follow. And it's always slightly behind the curve. Now, that may not be a problem. Being slightly behind the curve isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? But you're definitely following. AI can't lead because it can't generate reasonable results except by accident, and accidents happen, right? But they're rare, right? Thankfully. It can't generate new things. So if you want to be new and innovative, you want to use AI to know what not to do, and not ask AI what to do, because that's not going to work. If you don't mind following the trend and being successful with everybody else, AI is super useful, right? Of course, you still have to know how to engineer that context for it, give it that final cause, and narrow down the scope of the domain or domains that AI is using. That's where agents come in handy. One agent per domain, right? And then bang, you coordinate them either with another agent, which apparently is possible. I'm a little skeptical as to how good that's going to be, or with yourself. And then all of a sudden you have something reasonable, right? And so it can be used. It's just it's only high-speed automation. It's really not solving the problem that you think it's solving. And so that's more the issue. It's really not solving the problem that you think, and that's a huge issue for people in general. Is if you think AI is giving you new ideas or even good ideas, because it will hallucinate. It's obviously those by definition aren't good ideas. They're actually just wrong. Then you're going to run into a problem using it. But if you understand how to use it and that it's a great research tool, it's a fantastic research tool, and especially if you validate its sources, uh, and it's really good at organizing data. If you have a lot of data that can be organized, it's really bad if it's a lot of random data, though. So you got to have a sense for these things, right? Um, it's really good at search, right? At context search, which nothing was good at before. So LLMs are great for context search, but context search, they can go too far and still hallucinate. Right? So they're great for coordination. They're great for management and planning, right? Because management and planning is very programmatic and there's a lot of material on it and it's very similar. So when it learned that from whatever sources they stole it from, because they're all criminals who steal things, um, it's fairly regular. So it's going to be very consistent. It's going to train very well, right? If you tried to train it on, all of PewDiePie's YouTube videos, you get garbage out because he's not, he doesn't have one ethos. It's not one final cause. It's right. There's all these things going on, and it's very generational, right? And so you're going to get stuck in these weird domains. But AI is still useful, right? I'm still using it all the time, even the coding AI, although pretty much down to Claude Code and Gemini CLI just goes for days, like actual days, a week now. I think it's needed 3 inputs from me in a week. It's like, okay, keep going, buddy. It's running very long tests, hours and hours and hours, right? Hours per run, and then get the data, make adjustments, try again, hours per run, right? So it can do these neat things. There's no question about it. And you can pair it with the article I just saw was Tmux, which is a terminal emulator thing, right? And then have them coordinate amongst themselves. Here, guys, coordinate amongst yourselves and build me some software. I need a front-end engineer, a back-end engineer, a middleware engineer, build it like this. Here's your project managers, right? Yeah, you can do cool things like that. The question is to what end, right? And you're in a high competition environment. Anything you do with AI has the potential to be high competition because once somebody sees you do it, they can copy you in 4 seconds now with AI. So the world is sped up, technically. Just technically, everything's faster. I don't know what that means, other than it ain't going to be good. So hold on to your hats and use AI wisely because AI has no wisdom.